another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, I just thought I'd come on and have a little chat with you tonight and talk a little baseball, and hopefully everybody is here to enjoy that. I will tell you this. This is, I'm not sure how many broadcasts I have. We're on our way to 400 broadcasts, many of them live. So in the live presentations, hey, I just give facts and then I just let it roll from there. And then none of this is scripted. None of this is scripted. Now, if there's any script at all, it's just my fact about what happened on this particular day, because I have those in a spreadsheet that I've been keeping for 30 years. That's how I come up with all this unique information that I talk to you about. And so some of the easy things are the ones that everybody picks off. So you can go online and find out when somebody died, or when somebody was born, transactions. Those are some of the easy things. But to actually dig in and find games where people had super performances, guys, that takes some time. And that is where you have a lot of people who just don't want to roll their sleeves up and do that kind of work. So, yeah, they take the easy things. And if you know what's easy, because I've been doing this for a long time, I can tell you the things that you can pick off very easily. And typically there are a lot of things that have to do with, who was born on this day, who died on this day. But typically what you won't get a lot of times is who was married on this day. Now, see, some of this information you have to dig for. Some of these guys, hey, everybody wants to talk about the Negro Leagues, but a lot of people don't care about the Negro Leagues to the extent where they're going to spend the majority of their time just digging this information out. So whenever I meet somebody who really truly cares, who's been laboring with this history for a long time, I certainly appreciate that. And myself, this is my 46th year. So I've certainly tried to commit myself to this, and I've traveled all over the country giving presentations and just talking about this history. So tonight we're going to talk about this history with you. So as you know, I have a little statement I always make. If you like what I'm doing here, and first time you ever heard me, and you want to see some more, go ahead and subscribe. That always helps me, because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. But before I can get to 1,000, I want to get to by the end of this month to 700. Right? So you guys can help me get there by doing one other thing. If you like what I'm doing here, share the broadcast, right? Okay, so those are the two things that I ask. And then also, if you want to participate by sending a question or something like that, especially related to something I'm talking about, that's okay too. I try to answer those, and I try to squeeze all of this in about 20 minutes. So, guys, I do appreciate it. And thanks for the hearts, guys. Now, if you're joining me, you stay here for a minute or 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, let me know where you're joining from. I enjoy that very much, all right? Okay, so I'm going to jump right in here. And remember, this is the March 12th, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History, and this is the conversation that never stops. Okay, we got somebody from Philadelphia. Man, good baseball town there. And boy, you have some rich African-American history there with the Philadelphia Giants. Most people talk about the Philadelphia Stars, but to me, the Philadelphia Giants were the premier team that really made a difference. And of course, Saul White was there as their manager. And I always like to say that Saul White, if I had to put Saul White up against Connie Mack or let's say John McGraw, I would still rate Saul White ahead of those guys, because of the material he had to work with and the money he had to work with was nothing like the money they had to work with. But he still found ways to come up with legendary players and many, many wins. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go to March 12th, 1921. So Hurley McNair went 3 for 6, batting leadoff and scored a run. Then Lemuel Hawkins batted 3 for 4, scored 3 runs in the Los Angeles White Sox 14-7 win over Joe Peroni's Major League All-Stars in California Winter League action. Now, Rube Curry was the pitcher for the Los Angeles White Sox, who were composed of Negro League players, and he tossed a 9-hit game to get the victory. And he held Bob and Irish Musial. I don't know if you know those two guys. They played a lot of Major League Baseball. He held both of those brothers to 2 hits. Now, now, growing up, I heard about Bob Musial. I heard about Irish Musial. Saw lots of pictures of him. Never saw a picture of Rube Curry, but Rube Curry was shutting these guys down, right? True. And guess what? The really sad part about it is I lived in the same neighborhood Rube Curry came from. Yeah, he went to Lincoln High School in Kansas City, and I ended up not going to that high school, but many of my neighbors did. They played football there. Some of my classmates were football players there, right? So anyway, I didn't even know about this guy, but he's living right in Kansas City. That's where he came from. Of course, he didn't die there, but that's where he was living at the time, right? And so he would pitch that game, and now they put a big league pitcher against him, a guy by the name of Ray Keating. He's a former big league pitcher. He pitched for the All-Stars that day, and he was bumped for 15 hits. So he gave up more hits to the Negro Leaguers than Curry gave up to the white major leaguers. Just imagine that. Just imagine the conversations in the clubhouse that these guys must have had, right? So anyway, so Keating, he posted a 31-51 record in 751.2 innings of pitching for the American League Yankees, and then also for the National League Boston Braves. And he couldn't get these guys out, and these guys did not have one inning in the American National League. Guys, I'm telling you, when we merged the statistics about a year ago, there was a reason those statistics needed to be merged, all right? Okay, so that is my first fact. Let me answer a question right here. Somebody said, what baseball venue did the Philadelphia Giants play at? Well, it's the interesting thing is they did play most of their games on the road. They were the Philadelphia Giants, but they probably only played maybe 10 games in Philadelphia that year. And most of their games are on the road. So they're going to play in New York every Sunday. And during the week, they're going to be all through New Jersey, New York, different places in Pennsylvania, and then they always had to get back to New York. So that year they played a lot of teams in the Tri-State League, and that was places like Johnstown and Harrisburg was in the Tri-State League. They played both of them. Then also, who else did they play? They played some teams in the Connecticut State League. They played, some teams in the New England League. And guess what? They beat all those guys. They finished that year. They had 21 losses. And I think it was like 130 some odd wins. I don't have it right in front of me, but I have it in my book. But yeah, so they were a really good team. So just know that they were there. No, they didn't play. You said, I wish there were more pictures of Hilldale Stadium. Yeah, so you know what? Some of the pictures that I found, years ago I was doing something project on night baseball, and so I ended up contacting the company that put lights into some of these baseball fields, and so I was able to get pictures of some of these fields that they instructed, put lights in early, and they're fields that typically you couldn't get good photographs of, but it came from the company who was installing the lights. And so, hey, you'll be surprised what's out there when you dig. And once again, this is the kind of labor I'm talking about that people aren't spending the time to do, because, hey, if they can put out a story and get a bunch of recognition, put out a book, the book doesn't have to be that good. Matter of fact, some of the books are so bad that, see this microphone here? Those books are holding up this microphone. They're underneath there to elevate my microphone. That's how bad some of these books are. And I know George Giles, the great first baseman of the Kansas City Monarchs, he used to like to read my work, and then he would read somebody else's work, and he'd say, hey, their work is just the same cup of coffee warmed over. And so, guys, you can warm the coffee over and over and over again, but after a while, people get tired of drinking it. And that's been the story of Major League Baseball. And, I will also tell you, I only have, like, right now, I'm trying to get to 700 subscribers, but it's amazing. Sometimes I'll be talking about something, and then because I subscribe to all these different baseball sites, the next day, the very thing I talked about, somebody has dug a little deeper and put that same thing up, but they weren't talking about it. And so I noticed somebody put something up about Eddie Wakus when I was talking about Eddie Wakus last night, and the reason I was talking about Eddie Wakus is because it made me think about Wakus because I was talking about Claude Stillorm Dickey. So there was no reason for Eddie Wakus to be mentioned yesterday unless you're listening to this broadcast. Yeah. So Eddie Wakus, if you want to hear what I said about Eddie Wakus, go back and listen to tomorrow. Okay. Somebody said, "Are you familiar with the Derby Daisies?" Of course I am. You ever see the long World Series picture from 1924 that has Hilldale on one side and the Kansas City Monarchs on the other? Well, just know that in 1980, I was 23 years old, wanting to conduct research on the Negro Leagues, and I really didn't have any money. And Carol Ray Moffo had passed away. He left me that photograph. I took it to a company in Kansas City, Smith Greaves Publishing is what they were called, and I had them make me 1,200 copies, beautiful copies. Then I sold those copies in 1980, believe it or not, for $3 a copy, and that is how I funded my research. $3 a copy, and you know what? I was hard to get that. It was hard, but I had some people who came along. I don't know if you remember Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan's still around. Did broadcasting. He does football. You'll hear him do basketball occasionally. But Kevin Harlan, he was just coming out of college. He bought one, and Kevin still has it on his wall after all these years. And it's a great conversational piece, and it really ignited interest in the Negro Leagues. And I would go to baseball card shows, and I would sell them, and people would buy them because they just liked it. And so that's how it got started. So do I know something about Hilldale? Oh, I know a lot about Hilldale. And how about this one? Are you ready for this one? I am probably the only guy alive that interviewed two of the players, and that would be Judy Johnson, and I interviewed Clint Thomas, both of those guys. And then I interviewed, let's see, two of the Monarchs. I interviewed Newt Allen and George Sweat, who were both in that World Series from 1924. So hopefully that answers your question, because that puts me in an elite club of people who have really made a difference in this hobby. Okay, so let's go to the next fact. March 12th, 1927. Let's stay out on the California coast there. And Willie Wells and Newt Joseph and Turkey Stearns hit home runs, and Crush Holloway and Turkey Stearns both collected 3 hits each, and Willie Foster struck out 4. Man, that's a bunch of Hall of Famers there. In a 10-3 win over the Seattle Indians in Bakersfield, California. Wow. So, man, just imagine if you were there that day, you would see Willie Wells, Turkey Stearns hit home runs. And then Newt Joseph is a sleeper. Newt Joseph, I think that Newt Joseph probably had at least 200 home runs. And I've never sit down and actually tried to count them all. But Newt Joseph, the great third baseman, originally born in Birmingham, Alabama, but was raised in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and raised right across the street from the high school, the famous high school there, Booker T. Washington High School. And the reason I know that because I interviewed his sister. And he had another brother, Wilson Joseph, that also played. I don't think Wilson actually played in the Negro League, but he did play with the Gilkerson Union Giants, some traveling teams. And how about this? Remember the Monrovian team that played the Ku Klux Klan in Wichita, Kansas? Well, Wilson Joseph was a part of the Monrovians team down in Wichita. So Wichita, Kansas. All right. So guys, now this is information that's almost like bonus information. Now I did get a chance to interview Willie Wells. I did talk to Newt Joseph's widow. I talked to Turkey Stearns' family all the time. I didn't know anybody who knew Crush Holloway, but and then Willie Foster, his grandson follows me now, Doug Foster, and you'll see him around. He kind of looks like Rube, a young Rube Foster, if you ever see Doug. So Doug Foster, he's around, and that is Willie Foster's grandson. So I did talk to Willie Foster's sister, though. She was living in Ruth Foster's apartment there with Ruth Foster's daughter-in-law, And his daughter-in-law was, of course, married. Her name was Doris. She was married to Earl, which was Ruth Foster's only son. So yeah, so this is stuff, guys. I'm telling you things that you won't get anywhere else. I'm just telling you. Now, somebody can look this information up, but they didn't meet these people. I went to these people's homes, guys. I mean, if I can tell you how many times I sat in Ruth Foster's apartment talking to his daughter, you wouldn't believe it. You would say, "Man, that's like a dream come true." Yeah, I sit in his apartment there off of Michigan Avenue, and yeah, so and I've even written a book about Ruth Foster called "A Harvest on Freedom's Field," and I give a lot of information. Now, what's interesting is I only took that book up to 1910, so I took his early career up to 1910. But one of these days, God willing, I'm going to go back and finish off the rest of his career because it never stopped being great to the day he passed away. All right. And I interviewed people who actually went to Kankakee, Illinois, when he was in the state mental hospital there in Kankakee. Yeah. So I have the story like no one else can tell you, and I need to tell it, guys, because if I don't tell it, guys, maybe some of this information gets lost, right? And it would have gotten lost had I not been willing to roll up my sleeves and pay the cost. And here's what I say: pay the cost, guys. Back in those days, we didn't have a cell phone like me talking to you right now. I had to wait till after 6 o'clock on the weekends and after 10 o'clock and all this kind of stuff, wait for the rates to go down. And man, I was always worried about my telephone going off because hey, when you're selling pictures for $3 a picture, guys, you got to sell a lot of photographs to fund your work. So it was always a struggle. And but fortunately, I've been married. This would be my 43rd year, and my wife has been with me all the way. And if I was to bring her on here, she could tell you some stories about us just struggling. But I always tell people this, guys: I never had a job in baseball doing this history, right? And I did work as assistant director of public relations for the Kansas City Royals, but I'm talking about this history specifically. And so mine was truly a passion. And that's what's kept me afloat all these years, guys. Now, if somebody paid me to do this history, you know what? I would be kind of worried because if you're paying me, you could probably fire me, but you can't fire me. You can't fire a guy with a passion. You know that, right? Because the passion just keeps burning, the flame stays alive regardless. All right. Okay. So, all right then. So we're gonna go. Let me hit a few modern day players that you might recognize. Okay. How about this? March 12th, 1942. Jimmy. Well, we won't call him Jimmy. We'll call him James Sherman Wynn. The toy cannon. Jimmy Wynn is born in Hamilton, Ohio, and of course he led the National League with batters with 148 walks in 1969. That's a lot of walks, guys. And 127 walks in 1976, blasting a trio of home runs and over a 15-year big league campaign. Yeah. How many people remember Jimmy Wynn? Yeah, I remember back in the 70s playing with the Astro. Man, had the big what you call those sideburns, man. A lot of those guys in the 70s it was a wild period. They had the big sideburns, and I'm trying to think. Oscar Gamble had the big afro. He barely put a hat on it, and Doc Ellis running around with rollers in his hair. Man, it was a wild period there. But you know what? It kept you interested in baseball because you never knew what was going to happen next, right? And I would go out to the park and I'd meet all these people. So, and somebody said, "How was it to know Willie Wilson?" I know Willie real well. We talk. I tell you one thing you probably won't know about Willie. Willie was a great football player. Oh man, if you ever seen any of his football highlights, this guy was simply amazing. So he could have played football as well at a very high level. And but he chose baseball, and he was a great guy. Willie was always an interesting guy to talk to, and some of these guys would be more standoffish back at that time, but since I was in the clubhouse all the time, and they knew I knew a lot about baseball, and I knew how to talk to people, right? And so, and I respected all these people, and then whenever they had a problem, they come to me. I remember one time. This is funny. You know how they have walk-up music now, and you can play the walk-up music, and ball players can select their own songs. Well, when the Royals are out there kind of warming up, and they'd be playing stuff from the '60s. You know how the kind of stuff they play at the stadiums, right? So Willie Wilson went up and talked to the guy who was doing the music. He said, "Why don't you play some Cameo?" Now I don't know if you know much about Cameo. Um, but Cameo was pretty hot then. This is like about 1980, 70, 79, 80, somewhere in there, right? No, 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 no. I take that back. This was like about 1990. All right. So 1990. So Cameo is hot right there. So Willie Wilson trying to get them to play Cameo. And the announcer guy who he tried to get to play it came back and said, they won't let me play it because they said it's too much cussing in it. Well, if you ever listen to any Cameo music, there's no cussing. And so they just wouldn't play it. And so now you probably go there, they're probably playing it. But back when he wanted to be played, guys trying to loosen up, they want to hear some music that they like. They wouldn't even play it. Cameo, guys, there's no cussing in Cameo. And I remember having a talk with Willie Wilson about that. That they wouldn't play it. They wouldn't play it. And that was the resistance that these guys got back then. I could tell you some great stories. Frank White is a good friend of mine. Actually, my first book, Frank White actually wrote the foreword for that book. It was called the Kansas City Baseball Trivia Quiz Book, and he did a number of appearances with me. John Mayberry. I have some great stories about John Mayberry. I knew John very well, still know John very well. I remember his son used to come in the clubhouse, and he was in elementary school, and that guy, he had a big league career, and he's finished. So I said, man, I've been around forever. Okay. I can remember big leaguers who were retired who were kids. Yeah. Willie Wilson. Oh, he in 1980. Yeah, Willie Wilson had a terrible World Series in 1980. I remember talking to Pete Rose, and Pete Rose could tell you all of Willie Wilson's numbers from 1980. Pete Rose was able to tell me that. And it's so funny. Pete Rose, I talked to him, I guess, maybe 2021 when I was in Cooperstown. We were talking about that. And then I told him I was in Cooperstown because they were going to induct Buck O'Neil. And after giving me all these great numbers, and man, his memory is incredible, he asked me, say, hey, is Buck O'Neil around? I said, well, Buck O'Neil passed in, what did he pass? 2020, I'm going to say 2006. I think it was '06, right? So he didn't know that Buck O'Neil had passed away, but he could still quote the numbers from the 1980 World Series. Life is interesting, right? So yeah, I know Willie and a lot of those guys. So all right, so I'm gonna go. Actually, I'm gonna jump over to this one. How about this one? March 12, 1955, the New York Giants signed Hall of Fame first baseman Willie McCovey as an amateur free agent. Of course, Covey would go on to lead the National League in home runs 3 times. And how many people remember Willie McCovey? How many people had a chance to see him play? Right now, I never had a chance to actually talk to Willie McCovey. That's somebody that I missed. I missed a lot of those National League guys because they were just, I didn't get a chance to see him that often. So, but I would tell you this about McCovey. He was from Mobile, Alabama. Some good ball players come from Mobile, Alabama. And when I think of Mobile, I think about, how about a guy you wouldn't normally think of. And I'm trying to think his name. He was a first baseman. I'll call him in a minute. But let me tell you about something that I do know. How about W.D. Ratcliffe? He was a Mobile guy. How about Satchel Paige? Definitely a Mobile guy. Amos Otis, outfielder. I know Amos. Amos is a Mobile guy. And the guy I'm thinking about was the first baseman, played for the New York Black Yankees. Showboat Thomas, that was his name right there. A Mobile guy. Man, has anybody mentioned Showboat Thomas lately? Wow. Yep, they did play together. Bobby Bonds and McCovey. Let me give you some McCovey lifetime numbers. In 2,588 games, he picked up 2,211 hits, and he walked 1,345 times. So let's say he was on base often, right? And what about this? You ever thought about this? And this is a quick trivia question, guys. And just think about it in your mind, or if you think you know the answer. Who do you think stole the most bases? Willie McCovey or Elston Howard? All right, so you got the first baseman, you got the catcher. Who do you think stole the most bases? All right, okay. I'm going to tell you the answer. Believe it or not, it was Willie McCovey. Willie McCovey had 26 swipes in his career, and Elston Howard finished his career with nine stolen bases. And I remember talking to Hank Bauer, and Hank Bauer used to say that one time the Yankees had a meeting, and they called everybody into the clubhouse before the game or whatever. And Casey Stengel said, "Hey, look, I just want to make this announcement." He said it took the Yankees all these years to get he called him a colored player. He said, and we had to get the slowest colored player that ever lived. And he was talking about Elston Howard, because Elston Howard only stole 9 bases when you had people like Sam Drethro and Jackie Robinson coming through and stealing tons of bases. Elston Howard stole 9. So Willie McCovey, Big Willie McCovey, stole more bases than Elston Howard. How about that one? All right, so I'm almost finished here, and then I'm going to take one of your questions here. Okay, so I'll give you another modern day player that I had the fortune of meeting and talking with him as well. So March 12th, 1962, Darrell Eugene Strawberry Sr. is born in Los Angeles, California, and he was a Rookie of the Year in 1983 and led the National League with 39 home runs in 1988 for the New York Mets. Okay, now think about these numbers. Or we've been talking about some numbers here, all right? So in 1,583 games, he hit 335 home runs and stole 221 bases. And that's pretty good. However, there was another guy, and his name was Jimmy Wynn. You remember Jimmy Wynn? Okay, so when we talked about Jimmy Wynn, I'm going to go back to Jimmy Wynn because I'm going to compare him with Darrell Strawberry because they're both born on this day. So anyway, I will tell you this, though. Darrell Strawberry is a pastor now, and he was preaching in Kansas City, and so I had to go, I had to go see Darrell Strawberry. So I go and I see him, and he preached at a local church. So after he finished preaching, got to hang around, talk to the pastor, right? So I went and talked to Darrell, and we talked about a sermon. Then we talked about baseball, and I said, hey, I came out to California back in the '80s, and I stayed with Chet Brewer. Do you know Chet Brewer? And he knew Chet Brewer, yeah. So I can say I talked to Darrell Strawberry about Chet Brewer, but he's a pastor now and gave his life to Christ, and he's doing a good job. I know recently I think his wife was sick, so if you look him up on social media, by all means, send out a get well soon to his wife. Hopefully she's doing better now. And I need to do that myself. So as Darrell Strawberry, of course, he had some struggles, but many ball players through the years have had struggles. But I talked about Doc Ellis yesterday and how he had his struggles, and he came back to be a substance abuse counselor and did a wonderful job helping people. So, and Strawberry is doing the same thing right now. So, guys, yeah, it's been so interesting. Some of the people I met, and guys, I always tell people that I was just a kid who liked baseball, right? And I went out and started playing baseball probably about 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there, and then just kept on getting better and better, and stayed with it. And then but I always read a lot. I was always fascinated by the history, and so today I write books that I wished I could have read when I was a kid that would have inspired me. Now I have to work hard to get some of the young people to read these books because sometimes I think my books are over their head. How about that? So anyway, let me go. I do want to mention Jimmy Wynn. Okay, and Jimmy Wynn. Let's see. We said that he had about 291 home runs. Now he's born on this day, March 12, 1942. He had about 291 home runs in 255 stolen bases in 1,920 games. So Darryl Strawberry hit more home runs, but looks like uh, Jimmy Wynn stole more bases, right? So when you think about Jimmy Wynn and Darryl Strawberry born on the same day, that's quite a combination there, right? So I like to compare the numbers, see who was the greatest baseball player born on this specific date, guys. So that kind of does it for me tonight. I'm in 30 minutes, guys. So that's, I've been trying to keep the broadcast down to 20 minutes. And it seems like now I keep going over 30 minutes almost every night. Somebody said Strawberry killed Philadelphia. He killed a lot of teams. Then he came over to the American League and killed a few more. Somebody said it's amazing to see how great. I'm not sure what that means. How great something. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, uh, okay. It says Strawberry changed his life. Okay, somebody said Yeah, he definitely changed his life, and so he had a beautiful swing. Yeah, he did. What about Doc Gooden? Doc Gooden. I've never met Doc Gooden. I almost did about a couple of times, but I'd love to meet him and have a talk with him as well. I wanted to meet all the guys that I enjoy watching and just talk a little baseball. Some of the baseball I had, I remember talking to Dick Allen. Man, I had a great time talking to Dick Allen. Also Eddie Murray, talking to Eddie Murray, and I talk to Frank White all the time. And Frank White was talking to me about maybe let's do a project together, and we may do that, right? And so anyway, it's always my pleasure, guys, and I'm trying to get to that 700. So if you're just new joining me, by all means subscribe. It doesn't cost a dime to subscribe. It will alert you though when I'm coming on and doing a live or when I drop a video or something like that. I haven't been dropping as many videos, so that's going to be a growth area for me. And I'm going to wait till I get to about 1,000 broadcasts, and I will tell you this, guys. I've already got my camera and everything. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. And so I'm going to drop it. You see, I've got the microphone. I've got all the setup and everything. So I'm looking forward to the future. But for now, I just want to give you as much baseball information as I can because, guys, these are things I've experienced. And this conversation nightly gives me a chance to just talk to different people. And I love talking to baseball fans, and I have some in here tonight. I can tell by your comments, and I like that. So, how did Willie Mays get the nickname "Say Hey Kid"? I'm not sure about that one. And that's another guy. I met Hank Aaron, but I did not meet Willie Mays, and I was hoping to do that. I went down. I had everything scheduled to go down to Birmingham when he was supposed to come. What was that? Was it last year or year before? When the Giants, it was year before. So when the Giants were playing the Cardinals, and he passed away that weekend, and so I did not get a chance to actually meet Willie Mays. But just being in Birmingham that weekend, guys, is a weekend that I will probably remember for the rest of my life because it was all about celebrating Mays, and people came to the old Rickwood Field down there. And that's not, I had been to Rickwood before because I had been a speaker. John Lewis has a program that he does, and they take people back and they walk over to Edmund Pettus Bridge. Well, I had been their speaker a couple of years back, and so we went down to Birmingham, and I spoke down there for the pilgrimage. Yeah, I spoke in Birmingham at the new baseball park, and so that was quite an honor. And we were there with Ralph Abernathy's family and Fred Shuttlesworth, who was the airport is named after, a great pastor, civil rights fighter. He was there. And then we went on to Montgomery and we walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I would tell you what kind of guy I am, guys. All that week I'm with senators and congressmen and families of famous people who participate in the civil rights movement. So we get to the Edmund Pettus Bridge and we go across the bridge. And now we're going back across, and there are people on the side. And so, being who I am, I like to talk to people. So I just went over and talked to some of the people on the side, and I found out some of these people had come from 200 and 300 miles just to be there on that day. So I said, "Hey, did you meet any of the celebrities?" And they said, "No, we didn't get a chance to." I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure you meet them. So every time a senator, a congressman, a famous family came over that bridge, I called them over and said, hey, come over and talk to these people. They want to meet you. And people came over, they took pictures and everything. Oh, we had a great time. But that's what I like to do. I really do sincerely love people. And that is one of the reasons why I tour so much. And so if you go back and you look at my Facebook page, guys, just go through it, you'll see that I have a lot of appearances I made. A couple of years ago, I did a 200 city tour, and it took me 4 years. 200 cities, that's 200 different cities. And if I went to Wichita one time, I only counted one time, but I might have gone there 4 times in that period. But I just went out there and just kept going back over and over again. And so I met a lot of people because I love people and I love talking about this history. Somebody said John Lewis is a real hero. Yeah, yeah. John Lewis. I never had a chance to meet him, but going on this pilgrimage changed my life. It kind of told me that you got to keep doing what you're doing. And then I went to Cooperstown. This was maybe, well, it was the same year that Bud Fowler and Buck O'Neill were enshrined in the Hall of Fame. So instead of staying in Albany, I stayed in Newburgh because there's a statue of John Lewis in Newburgh, New York. And I wanted to see that statue. And I stayed in Newburgh, and I have pictures with me standing by the statue. And it's just like in the middle of nowhere downtown, nothing's around it. But you know what? Because I was on the pilgrimage, I wanted to keep it going, keep this history going, and I wanted people to know that statue is there. And so it's a John Lewis statue in Newburgh, New York. And by the way, the Philadelphia Giants did play Newburgh in 1905, right? In that wonderful season they had. They played right in Newburgh, and I've been there. And so, guys, that does it for me. Oh, I don't want to, I could go on and on and on, but since I got to come back tomorrow, guys, I don't have to spend all my energy tonight. I can come back tomorrow and I'll have new facts for you and new names I'm going to drop. But we've seen some wonderful names tonight, and the conversation continues because there's going to be more tomorrow and every day afterwards, right? So thank you for joining me. This has been one of the longest broadcasts I've done and probably ever as a live, but a lot of people have stayed with me tonight. I certainly appreciate it. Look, I have to tip my hat to you guys and for staying with me tonight. So, and thanks for the wonderful questions. And I did meet Bob Euchre. Yes, I did. I did meet in Good Trouble. Yep, that's John Lewis's favorite statement there, right? So, guys, thank you, and come on back. And now remember, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe. If nothing else, share the broadcast. And guys, we'll get to 700, and I want to get there by April 1st, April Fool's Day. So, look, I'm hoping that they don't fool me. We're not that far away. We're probably within 40 of getting there, guys. So, all right. So, yes, I do have Ken Griffey Senior story. I do have Ken Griffey Senior stories. Met him downtown in the hotel Crown Center. That's a good one. I will come back with that one on another occasion. But yes, I do have Ken Griffey Senior stories. All right, guys. Thank you. You have a nice day, and I'll see you real soon. Bye. This has been Phil Dixon, and this has been today's edition of the March 12th, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. And the conversation did not end tonight. It's only beginning.